painful reminders to many of us that the structures of social stratification and brutality have long existed, have long been in place despite the civil rights and Black Power movement, despite the formalized equality. Indeed, in 1942, a Swedish economist, Gunnar Myrdal, who was commissioned to study race relations, published a 3,000-page, 2-volume book called The American Dilemma, The Negro Problem in Modern Democracy. Gunnar's analysis led him to conclude that the American dilemma was a, quote, ever-ranging conflict between commitments to American creed and anti-Negro practices and sentiments. I start with Gunnar Myrdal's 1942 book for a variety of reasons. One, he started the work in 1938. Two, he was talking to Du Bois, E. Franklin Frazier, Ralph Bunche, Kenneth Clark, and others quite familiar with Baltimore. And then 26 years later, in 1967, the Kerner Commission on Civil Disorders in Detroit and Newark for those riots came to conclusions much similar to Myrdal in regards to the intersecting roles of racism and systematic denial of economic mobility. Both those reports talk about the same things: crime and insecurity, exploitation of disadvantaged consumers, the control of vulnerable communities, housing and denied educational opportunities. And these problems were cited again after the 1968 riots and the 1992 riots. I say that because the culprits are all the same, even though the actors have changed, the context has changed, but racism, economic and social exploitation, and a punitive criminal justice system still exist. They're all out to control and disenfranchise. While I do admit that some of these reports sometimes veer into pathologizing Black culture, they do bring forth the idea of Black cumulative disadvantage. And so in 1942, Myrdal tried to spark this soul-searching conversation that Du Bois is talking about. And so as I submit to you, there's nothing new here. There's nothing new here. They're just analyses that haven't been taken seriously. They're just things that people don't understand when they talk about the cumulative disadvantage. And so the danger of ignoring cumulative disadvantage, and that's the notion that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer based upon where they start. And so redlining a district, redlining a community is a place of putting people at a different starting place. And so I start with this this constellation up here because if you just simply look at the 7 stars, you miss the pattern. And if you miss the pattern, then you miss the analysis. And again, the danger of ignoring the constellation of forces is that you don't know where you can do your analysis. So in the short time that I have left, I want us to highlight some statistics that talk about the context of where Freddie Gray and others are situated. And so we're going to start with unemployment. Just simply thinking about unemployment and where people start and where people finish. So these are just the racial differences in the duration of unemployment by weeks in Maryland. Okay, so just simply an analysis, we know that Blacks in Maryland are more likely to be unemployed. We may not appreciate how that experience of unemployment looks. Here you see the mean and median works of unemployment. The takeaway simply is that Blacks are more likely to be unemployed for longer periods of time than their white and Hispanic counterparts. And so in 2013, you see Blacks classified as unemployment experienced nearly 18 weeks of being unemployed by whites, whereas whites experienced only 15 weeks. And so that's a look at Maryland. Then we look at racial differences in Baltimore City. Here, this is a Baltimore City specific slide. So let's be specific. Note that Blacks have nearly double-digit unemployment rates. So when I was growing up, the adage was, if whites had a cold, Blacks had the flu. What that meant simply, that's a diagnostic tool. What that meant was, if individuals who were white had a cold, they were able to survive that. But a flu requires a different type of intervention. And so when you look at the unemployment rate, then I'm going to tell you about the trick that labor statistics plays on you by discounting certain people in the calculation of the unemployment rate. But when you look at that, what you see is that there's a 3-to-1 ratio in some places where Blacks are less likely to be classified as employed. So yes, there are race and gender dimensions to that. There are race and gender dimensions to that unemployment. So here you see the gender-specific slide. Again, the patterns hold, but we see something more startling. There are large portions of Black men and Black women who are unemployed. Large portions of Black men and Black women who are unemployed. So if you do the math, you'll see a significant difference. That statistically significant difference between the employment of Blacks and whites based upon their gender characteristics. So here's the trick that labor statistics play, right? The term unemployment does not capture two segments of the population. One, those who are discouraged workers. The Bureau of Labor Statistics defines a discouraged worker as those who are not actively looking for work in the prior 4 weeks because of they don't think work's available, they can't find work, other forms of discrimination, or they lack schooling or training. So what I'm saying is, unemployment rates are a conservative estimate of the social stratification that blacks feel. This also does not capture what they call the marginally attached to the labor force, or individuals who wanted to work, available to work, and they had left for a job sometime in the prior 12 weeks. So the takeaway is that we need to really start looking at constellations. A constellation of forces as opposed to individual stars. Okay? That's what we need to do. So then we look at the racial differences and where people are employed. Let's say we just look at those who actually find a job. What you see from this slide is that blacks are more likely to be in particular categories. They're less likely to be managers. They're less likely to be professionals. More likely to be service jobbers. Different occupations bring different financial rewards and opportunities for upward mobility. These different occupations also afford people with different levels of interaction with government officials, including the police. So where you find yourself, sort of in a, sort of Paula Giddens, where and how I enter a space will determine my interactions. So let's think about what we talked about a few minutes ago with this notion of redlining, housing. Let's just look at median household income. So here you have a slide that's Baltimore specific, and then you have a slide that's about the entire state. And then what you see is blacks are more likely to be poor in terms of household income. These are real statistics that determine how we engage in our analysis. And then here's just a general slide, looking at the Baltimore Towson metropolitan area. So what you see is blacks are less likely to have high levels of median income. They're more likely to be renters. They're more likely to take public transportation. So shutting down public transportation during this time is a real economic impact that people might miss. Okay? And then you overlay car ownership and how long you have to travel. That's called spatial displacement. So where are the jobs located? Literally, can you get to a job and how long does it take to get to a job? Then we can look at incarceration, and my time is limited, but we can talk about what all these things mean in a cumulative sense. Where are individuals situated relative to the police? And then we have individuals, these are just aggregate stuff, right? But the beauty of social science, the beautiful nature of social science is that we also have individual level analysis. And so when individuals get on television and say they don't know, then that means they're not looking at their own data. This is the Baltimore City survey. This is their own data. From 2009 to 2014, they asked Baltimore City residents a slew of questions. And yes, I have the data. They have the data.
Come on, Tyson. Yes.
Is that when you ask Baltimore City residents about the availability of jobs, what you see, blue is not good. That means that more people think that there are poor availability of jobs. The mayor came in 2011, just to let you know. So it's not as if there's not data, real analysis from 1942 to 2014 to let them know there's a serious situation. Then you look at the quality of police protection. From 2009 to 2014, again, blue is not good. What you see is more people in Baltimore City are more likely to say the quality of the police protection is poor or fair. Then we go to satisfaction with police professionalism. And so I'm going to focus on that 16% just for a second. So what you see here is that, yeah, you can say there's some more green, so that's a good thing, right? A good social scientist understands geography. So when you disaggregate the data, and you say, well, where are these people who are unsatisfied? They live in Freddie Gray's district. They live in the Western District. where they report they're less likely to be satisfied with the professionalism of police. So what do? Do we see little stars, or do we see a constellation? When you see a constellation, then you ask different types of questions. When you ask different types of questions, you have to ask yourself, how are the lived experiences and the opportunities in Baltimore connected to race, gender, geography, wealth, amongst a whole set of things that intersect? They're not multiplicative or additive, they intersect. So it does mean that when you watch television and you listen to these individuals who are talking about people who are thugs or criminals, you have to ask yourself, you have to step back and say, who's the one that's doing the disinvestment? And once you begin to do that, you begin to appreciate where you sit right there. And the power that you have to call attention to inequality. Call it what it is. Social oppression. Call it what it is. There's power in naming the thing that you want to.